The teapot was still warm when Margaret Willard vanished from the red brick house in Milwaukee's Bayview neighborhood, Wisconsin, population 34,512. On December 18, 2005, an early-season blizzard swept across Lake Michigan's shore, burying all traces within hours. At 7:15 a.m., her neighbor Harold Kent saw the 68-year-old widow shoveling snow in her front yard, wearing a green coat and a beige knit hat. By evening, the house was still lit, the radio playing Silent Night, but no one answered the door. The teapot on the table still steamed faintly. A chair tilted, as if someone had just left, the door unlocked, and the car still in the garage. What happened in the next 12 hours would chill Milwaukee in a way winter never could. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest cases. On December 18, 2005, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the first blizzard of the season swept through the quiet Bayview neighborhood along Lake Michigan, blanketing bare trees and the winding paths around old homes. In the single-story brick house at the end of S Shore Drive, Margaret Maggie Willard, 68, a widow, lived alone. That morning, neighbors saw her shoveling snow on her porch in her green coat, beige knit hat, and familiar beige gloves. She was, as usual, slow, diligent, bending with each scoop of the shovel. As the snow thickened and the wind began to howl along the lake, people assumed she'd gone back inside. By noon, no one saw her in the yard. By evening, the yellow glow of light still shone through the curtains, the radio softly playing Silent Night, the Christmas song she always played in winter. Her neighbor Diane Keller knocked on the door, calling out, but got no response. The door was unlocked. Inside, the teapot was still warm, the chair in the living room tilted as if someone had just stood up. No mess, nothing missing. On the table, the calendar was still open to the previous day, a pen leaning in a ceramic jar, everything frozen in an unfinished moment. Diane called Margaret's granddaughter, Ellen Willard, who lived in Waukesha. Ellen drove nearly an hour through the blizzard to get there, stepping into the silent house with only the radio's hum. She went from room to room, calling her grandmother's name, opening every cabinet, every window. The landline phone sat neatly on its stand, her purse and papers untouched, her car still in the garage. No signs of a struggle, no footprints in the thick snow outside, just an endless white stretching to the empty street. At 9:34 p.m., Elaine stood in the kitchen, hands trembling as she held the phone. Her voice was hoarse as she told the operator, "My grandmother is missing." Outside, snow fell relentlessly, large flakes piling on the roof, slowly covering the porch light. When police sirens cut through the night, Bayview remained silent, as if the neighborhood had lost something no one had yet realized. Headlights from the first patrol car pierced the thick snow, blue and red lights flashing across closed windows. 2 Milwaukee Police Department officers stepped out, coats soaked with snow, faces taut. One asked quickly, "She's alone in the house?" Ellen nodded, voice shaking. "Yes, my grandmother lives alone." They spoke briefly, then began searching the neighborhood. Headlights from 2 patrol cars swept along the snow-covered shore drive, sirens faintly echoing in the quiet night. They called in 2 more patrol units and a local rescue team with K-9 units. Temperatures dropped below -10 degrees Celsius, winds from the lake reducing visibility to a few meters. Along the path to Humboldt Park, snow-buried trails, fences sagging under ice. Officers moved in a line, flashlights scanning trees, bushes, benches, and signs buried in snow. Radios crackled. Unit 2, negative on footprints, no heat trace. Nothing, just snow, wind, and a freezing darkness. At the Willard house, Ellen sat in the living room, eyes fixed on a fogged window. A young officer returned for more details: height, weight, coat color, any jewelry. Ellen tried to recall every detail. Dark green coat, beige knit hat. She always wore a silver maple leaf necklace. He jotted it down, glancing at his watch, past midnight. The wind howled outside, By the lake, the search team looped back, dragging floodlights across the snow, finding only their own footprints. When the clock struck 2 a.m., the team leader called it off. "Visibility 0, suspend search until morning," he said curtly, over the radio. The night's report read, "Search initiated, no evidence found, no indication of struggle. Possible cold exposure." The patrol cars left, headlights fading into the snow. The house fell silent again. Only the radio's faint old song and Ellen's still figure in the living room. Outside, Lake Michigan's wind whistled through bare trees, a distant warning. Somewhere in Milwaukee's blinding white, Margaret Willard had vanished without a trace. The next morning, as the sun struggled through thick clouds over Lake Michigan, police returned to Shore Drive with an expanded search team. The snow had stopped, but formed a layer over 2 feet thick, erasing all traces from the night before. Milwaukee PD officially launched the missing person operation, Operation Willard. Teams split up. One combed the lake shore, another searched nearby roads, and a third worked with volunteer rescuers and county K-9 units. Gardens and parks were cordoned off, a rescue tent set up at Humboldt Park's parking lot. Overhead, a police helicopter circled, its spotlight slicing through snowy patches on the gray lake. Each time it dipped low, snow swirled, dusting the rescue vehicles below. Ellen was called to the field command post to provide details again. She sat quietly by a cold coffee, eyes red, voice hoarse, as she recounted that final evening. The precinct's chief, middle-aged, tall, deep-voiced, gently asked about acquaintances, daily habits. Ellen shook her head. "My grandmother never went out after 6 p.m. Never." He only replied, "We'll find her." By day 2, K-9 units began tracking from Shore Drive toward Humboldt Park, but thick snow and shifting winds diluted any scent. One dog paused at the corner of South Lincoln Avenue and Superior Street, barking softly and circling. When the handler shined a flashlight at the curb, something poked through the snow, a beige knit glove, wet, streaked with mud. Police bagged it, marked the GPS coordinates. When Ellen saw the glove in the nylon bag, she whispered, "My grandmother had gloves like that." Milwaukee PD's forensics lab worked through the night. Rapid analysis confirmed DNA on the glove, matched skin samples from Margaret Willard's hairbrush. It was hers. The find shifted the team's focus to South Lincoln, expanding the search southwest toward the old port. They raked snow, checked drains, trees. But beyond the glove, nothing, no tire tracks, no fabric, no drag marks. The helicopter kept circling, thermal sensors detecting no heat signatures beyond wildlife. Infrared cameras scanned dozens of rooftops, finding nothing. Police requested security footage from the neighborhood, but it was 2005, most cameras used low-res VHS tapes, many ruined by snow. The grainy footage showed only delivery trucks, no woman in a green coat or beige hat, no stores, no gas stations, no cameras captured Margaret after that morning. By day 3, reporters gathered at the command tent. Local journalists pressed for answers, but police declined to comment, only stating it remained a missing person case with no evidence of foul play. Under gray sunlight, rescuers kept digging through snow, searching roadside debris, the park's small lake. An old buried coat caused a brief pause, but it was just discarded fabric. By the afternoon of day 3, lake winds picked up, snow falling lightly again. Chief Donahue gathered the team in the field tent, faces weary from cold and exhaustion. 3 days, no traces, no witnesses, no vehicles left the area, he said slowly, folding the map. The interim report noted, last confirmed sighting, 7:30 a.m., December 18, 2005. Evidence recovered. 1 beige glove. No trace of vehicle. No foul play established. Ellen was sent home to rest, the house sealed for further examination. That evening, she sat in her car, staring at her grandmother's dark brick house, the porch light still on. Snow fell again, slow and thick, as if erasing the last of 3 fruitless days. The next day, The case was officially transferred to Milwaukee PD's Missing Persons Unit. On the case file's cover, bold text read, Case #051218, Willard, Margaret E. Missing under unknown circumstances. At the bottom, in blue ink, the chief added a short note. No resolution yet. On the fourth morning, since Margaret Willard's disappearance, Milwaukee's sky remained overcast, lake winds swirling around waterfront homes, like a dry, cold breath. With the field search paused due to weather, focus shifted to 4829 S Shore Drive, where it all seemed to begin and end. A crime scene unit team arrived from downtown, equipped with digital cameras, UV lights, micro-evidence kits, and sealed evidence bags. Chief Donahue stood on the porch, smoking half a cigarette before grinding it into the snow. "Don't miss anything," he said, voice rough. Inside, the house still smelled faintly of tea and heating oil. The living room lamp glowed, casting weak light on the walls, illuminating dust on a family photo frame. Lead technician Mark Ellison opened his notebook. Primary residence, single occupant, scene intact. They photographed every angle before collecting samples. On the tea table by the armchair, they found a silver spoon off its saucer, its tip smudged with something gray, possibly skin or drink residue. Nearby was a handkerchief embroidered with MW, stiff and yellowed at the edges. The teacup beside the pot had a thin discolored film. The rotary phone sat neatly on its stand, cord untangled, no signs of hurried use. All were numbered, photographed, and sealed. The kitchen was next. The fridge was shut tight, the room unusually warm from the still running heater, indicating no system disruption. The gas stove was clean, no gas smell. The back door to the yard drew attention. The lock was intact, the snow outside undisturbed. Under the wooden steps, faint boot prints, larger than average for a woman, with longer strides. Ellison measured them with a metal ruler, noting approx. Size 10, direction westward. The tread pattern was wavy, possibly from work boots, but unidentifiable. Snow samples from the spot were scraped into vials for trace analysis. Upstairs, the single bedroom had a neatly made bed, no signs of use from the night before. A dresser drawer was half open, clothes neatly folded. In the vanity drawer, they found a small expense notebook, last entry dated December 17th. Nothing unusual, just a short note. Called Dennis, bathroom plumbing. The name was lightly underlined, not crossed out. A technician marked, photographed, and sealed the notebook. UV lights revealed no biological traces or foreign fingerprints around the windows. Frames and locks were clean, only dusted lightly. Walls were unmarred, floors showed no drag marks, no signs of a struggle, Ellison said evenly. She just got up and vanished. A colleague found a small brown plastic button on the bedroom floor near the hallway door. Its source was unclear, also bagged. They noted the intercom phone system. The last outgoing call was at 7:12 p.m. on December 17th, lasting 42 seconds, to an unregistered local number, possibly a payphone or business. This was logged in the technical report. By noon, the CSU team finished processing the scene. They collected 17 items, including the spoon, handkerchief, teacup, phone, notebook, and snow with boot prints. All were sent to Milwaukee PD's central lab. The backyard snow was fresh, showing only the search team's tracks from the night before. No new traces were found. As they left, Ellison paused at the threshold, scanning the quiet house, frozen as if forgotten in time. Everything was eerily orderly, as if Margaret Willard had stood up mid-tea, stepped out briefly, and never returned. But beyond the endless snow, no trace showed where she'd gone. By day's end, the preliminary report was sent to the chief's office. The bolded conclusion read, "Scene shows no evidence of forced entry or struggle. Collected items, utensil with possible residue, personal fabric, household objects. No blood or biological trace. One unidentified shoe print, size approx. 10, case classified. Missing under unknown circumstances. Case #0 5-1218. Willard was sealed with a steel clip, stored in the cold filing cabinet of the temporary archive. Outside, dusk fell slowly over Lake Michigan, winds stirring snowy veils, as if covering the unresolved secrets within that small brick house. With the scene report filed, Sergeant Rick Donahue sat in his small second-floor office at Milwaukee PD, staring at a wall-mounted map. Red pins marked dense search zones around Shore Drive and Humboldt Park. At the map's center, he circled Margaret Willard's house, tracing the outline heavily, as if anchoring the starting point of it all. 3 days of searching, dozens of personnel, one glove, a few items, but no answers. Donahue was a quiet investigator, detail-driven, favoring caution over hunches. He believed that in seemingly harmless missing person cases, answers often hid among those closest to the victim. That morning, he compiled a list of 12 people who had contact with Margaret in the week before her disappearance, drawn from CSU reports and Ellen's notes. First, paper delivery boy, James Nolan, 14. Then Father Andrew Keller, St. Thomas Parish. Next, shop owner, Helen Wu, grocery on Lincoln Ave. And finally, a name that made Donahue pause, Dennis Laporte, 56, neighbor plumbing technician. Donahue tapped his pen, recalling the notebook entry, "Call Dennis, bathroom plumbing," lightly underlined. The only unfinished detail in the house. He called Lieutenant Ellison at CSU. "Anything in the evidence about the plumbing system?" "No clear damage, but there's old water staining around the first-floor sink. She might have meant to call for repairs." Donahue nodded, jotting, "Verify with Laporte. Contact confirmed." By noon, he began interviews. The paperboy said that on December 18th morning, he saw Mrs. Willard on the porch, smiling and waving. Then, she went inside. He didn't return. Nothing unusual. Father Andrew Keller said Margaret was a longtime parishioner, attending Sunday morning mass, but that day's blizzard emptied the church, and he didn't see her. Helen Wu, the grocer, said she came in on the 16th, bought tea and milk, cheerful as usual. Didn't mention anything odd. All seemed routine, no warning signs. Donahue marked cleared next to each name, except the last. That afternoon, he visited Dennis Laporte, 2 houses down from Willard's. The small brown house had a front yard cluttered with old plumbing tools, copper pipes, paint cans, and a truck with faded Laporte Plumbing Services lettering. Laporte answered after 3 knocks, tall, graying hair, in a grease-stained work jacket. The air smelled of tobacco and gasoline. "I'm Sergeant Donahue, Milwaukee PD. I need to ask about Mrs. Willard, your neighbor." Laporte nodded, unsurprised. "I know she's missing. Police asked me last night." "When did you last see her?" "Morning of the 17th. She called me over to check her bathroom pipes. Said the drain was slow. I was there around 9, worked about an hour, then left." "Did she seem worried or mention anyone else?" "No. She was kind, polite. We just talked about the cost and the weather. I told her not to shovel snow herself." Donahue opened his notebook, pressing, "What time did you leave her house?" "Around 10:30. Then I went to the Southside Water Supply Station. You can check my work log. I've got the receipt." Laporte fetched a stack of papers, handing Donahue a receipt dated December 17th, signed at 11:04 a.m. The timeline checked out, nothing suspicious. Donahue scanned the room, a cluttered desk, tools by the door, a pair of snow-wet work boots under the stairs. He glanced at them, wavy tread pattern, like the CSU report, but too common. Hundreds of workers in the city wore such boots. No grounds to conclude anything. Before leaving, Donahue asked, "Anything unusual in the neighborhood that night, or the 18th morning?" Laporte shook his head. "Just snow and wind. Nobody was out." "All right, if you remember anything, call me." Donahue handed his card, holding Laporte's gaze a second longer before leaving. Back at the station, he wrote a brief report. 11 names were cleared. Laporte was the last to see Margaret alive. His final note that day, subject Laporte Cooperative, presented work record consistent with timeline. No visible sign of deception. Shoe pattern similarity noted. Inconclusive. Recommend follow-up, only if new evidence emerges. Donahue set his pen down, leaning back. Outside, snow fell again, large flakes blanketing the empty streets. Deep down, something felt unsettled. A vague sense that this story wasn't over, just buried in Milwaukee's cold white winter. 2 weeks after Margaret Willard vanished, Milwaukee sank into long, grim, freezing days. Snow buried all traces, and the streets around Humboldt Park lay silent, as if no search had ever taken place. In the small second-floor office at police headquarters, Sergeant Rick Donahue sat before a thick case file, flipping through coffee-stained, cold-faded notes. On his desk was the search team's final report. A long list of negative results. No witnesses, no cameras, no signs of foul play. Every lead had dissolved, just like the woman who left this world without a sound. The technical analysis lab had completed every possible test on the collected evidence. The smudge on the silver spoon lacked enough DNA for analysis with 2005 technology. The handkerchief embroidered with MW bore only fabric traces from the victim's own clothing. The teacup held no foreign fingerprints. The boot print from the porch was molded in silicone and sent to the Wisconsin State Lab, concluding, pattern common to multiple brands. Inconclusive. Nothing could be pieced together into a lead. Donahue clung to the name Dennis Laporte, the plumber who last saw Willard. But records showed a solid alibi, work documents matching the timeline, no signs of deception. The invoice was verified. Laporte was at the water supply station at 11:04 a.m. on December 17. No grounds to hold suspicion. Other witnesses offered nothing new. The paperboy, the priest, the shop owner, all said the same. She was kind, kept to herself. No one would harm her. By month's end, an internal investigation meeting convened in a heavy atmosphere. The summary reported 14 days of searching, 25 personnel, 1 helicopter, 2 K-9 units, and no new evidence. The precinct chief read the brief conclusion: no further leads. Case remains an unsolved disappearance. In the corner, Donahue quietly closed the file, its gray cover stamped in bold, case #051218, Willard, Margaret A. Post-meeting. Personnel were gradually pulled. Volunteer rescue teams ceased operations. Missing posters around Bayview were torn by winter winds. The city police received hundreds of calls reporting a woman like Willard at bus stations, hospitals, even a store in Racine. All false. No bank account activity. No card transactions. No calls or signs of leaving the state. In early January, the case was officially transferred from Donahue's desk to the Milwaukee PD Missing Persons Unit. Cold bureaucracy, sign, stamp, code. The file was labeled open, inactive, meaning it remained legally open, but no longer actively investigated. Such cases only reopened with new evidence. That afternoon, Donahue stayed late as colleagues left. He set the file on his desk, staring through a fogged window. Outside, snow fell slowly, blanketing the parking lot in soft white. He flipped to the photo of the porch boot print, size 10, wavy pattern. A lone print among countless anonymous samples. Then he reviewed the image of the milieu handkerchief, its neat, delicate stitching, the only trace still holding the breath of the woman who vanished. At 6 p.m., he stood, leaving the archive room. Before turning off the light, he added a note to the final page. No progress. After 14 days, recommend archiving with biological samples. Retain all evidence for potential reanalysis pending technological advancement. In the evidence storage room, technicians packed each item: the silver spoon, handkerchief, teacup, snow sample, with the boot print, fabric fibers, notebook copy. All were sealed in nylon bags, labeled CSU 12 2005, and stored in Cold Storage Unit 4, third shelf on the left, where unresolved cases waited, hoping someone would remember. As Donahue locked the storage door, the hinge creaked softly in the empty, icy space. He knew that with each traceless disappearance, the odds of answers dwindled daily, yet a small part of him refused to let go. "No one vanishes completely," he whispered, his voice blending with the wind howling outside the glass. That evening, his final report was uploaded to Milwaukee's city system, as stark and cold as its contents. Case status: unsolved disappearance. Last update, January 4, 2006. Next review, pending new evidence. The file closed, hallway lights dimmed. In the cold storage, evidence bag sat silent under a veil of frost. Outside, winter pressed on, and Margaret Willard's name slipped into the long list of those who vanished without a reason. 2011. 6 years had passed since Margaret Willard disappeared from her small lakeside home. In the vast Milwaukee PD archive, her file rested on the third shelf among thousands of dusty numbered cases, their blue ink faded with time. Each year, the archive team reviewed and sorted, selecting unresolved cases for the cold case division, where forgotten names and unfinished stories lingered. Willard's was among them. That spring noon, an archive technician scanned the automated list, spotting case #051,218, Willard, Margaret E. Status: unsolved disappearance. Inactive. He marked it eligible and signed the transfer slip. A week later, the file landed on Detective Lieutenant Sharon Ainsworth's desk, head of the newly formed cold case unit under a Wisconsin DOJ partnership. She flipped through Donahue's 2005 reports, crisp, cold lines. No forced entry, 1 glove recovered, 1 male shoe print. No further leads. Under the office light, photos of the snow-covered house, silver spoon and porch boot print appeared faded, as if time had blurred memory itself. Ainsworth summoned Donahue, now a part-time consultant for retired investigators. They sat across a small table, coffee steaming between them. "What do you think of the Willard case?" she asked. Donahue replied slowly. "A disappearance with no direction, no motive. I suspected Laporte, but he was too clean. No evidence, no witnesses, and we lack the tech to prove anything." He gazed out the window, where lake winds still blew as they did years ago. "If anything can be done now, it's DNA." Ainsworth nodded, ordering all evidence reopened. But when technicians retrieved the old bags from Cold Storage Unit 4, the seals had faded, notes were damp, and many samples had degraded. Only the silver spoon, handkerchief, and a small dry snow sample with fibers remained. Experts tried extracting DNA from the spoon's smudge, but 2011 STR tech was limited, especially for samples degraded over 5 years. The result was a partial gene sequence, too short to identify, labeled low yield, degraded sample. The report concluded, unable to develop viable DNA profile, no other leads. The cold case report noted, recommend periodic retesting when new technology becomes available. A polite way to close a case with no forward path. After paperwork, the file was digitized into the department's electronic system, encoded, and stored on the central drive. The status read, cold case, archived for future review. Donahue retired fully that year. He removed the old map from his office, boxing it with other case files, but he kept the black and white photo of Willard's house, tucked in his leather binder, like an unhealed wound. Something was off, he told Ainsworth, at their last meeting. No one vanishes in winter, leaving everything intact. She gave a faint smile, familiar with such obsessions among veteran investigators. As for Dennis Laporte, the plumber neighbor, he left Wisconsin in 2007. He sold his small Shore Drive house to a young couple and moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, to live near his sister. When the cold case team tried tracking him, immigration records only noted, relocated. New state of residence confirmed, no active warrants. Milwaukee PD lacked jurisdiction for a federal investigation, and since Willard's case wasn't classified as a crime, Laporte wasn't monitored. His name vanished from law enforcement's radar, just like his alleged victim. Time marched on. The cold case division was swamped with bigger cases, murders, robberies, shootings. Willard's case, an elderly woman's traceless disappearance, slipped down the priority list. The old DNA report sat in a PDF, untouched for years. The Shore Drive house was repainted. New neighbors unaware of its history, the house number sign worn nearly illegible by lake winds. By late 2011, the case was archived as Cold Case 1147, with a note: no new leads, technology insufficient. Subject of interest relocated out of jurisdiction, case inactive until further notice. On the central data screen, the report's final line appeared: stark and cold as fate, status, cold case. Unsolved disappearance, probability of resolution, low. The system saved, closed the file, and moved Willard's case to archived. From then, her name vanished from internal meetings and news summaries. No one mentioned it, no one searched. Only the evidence bags remained in cold storage, and the Lake Michigan wind howled through Shore Drive, repeating a reminder no one heard. 2021. 10 years later, in March, Milwaukee entered a new era of criminal investigation, one where technology began filling gaps humans had missed. At the city's modern police headquarters, old filing cabinets were dismantled. Yellowed paper files scanned, digitized, and uploaded to cloud storage. The Digital Renewal Initiative, a large-scale Wisconsin-funded project, aimed to revive over 3,000 forgotten cold cases from 4 decades. The Special Investigations Team included a small group of veteran detectives and forensic experts skilled in genetic genealogy, a new method tracing suspects through distant relatives. Among them was Lieutenant Laura Grayson, 35, a forensic biology analyst who'd worked with the FBI on reanalyzing old DNA evidence. She was tasked with reviewing cases with well-preserved biological evidence in Milwaukee PD's cold storage. Grayson was meticulous, reserved, but known for tenacity and sharpness. For weeks, she sat in the archive room, screen light reflecting on tired eyes, sifting through digitized files, 1970s cases, winter disappearances, victims never found. But at case #051218, Willard, Margaret E., she paused. The evidence description caught her: spoon, with possible biological residue, preserved under -20 degrees Celsius since 2005. A sample potentially holding human DNA, crucially, sealed properly, untouched since 2011. She opened the technical notes. Previous STR attempt yielded partial degraded profile. The old sample had been tested, but 2005 tech couldn't extract a full sequence. Grayson stared at the line, a gap her generation could bridge. She called her superior, Major Brent Holloway, overseeing the digitization project. "I think I've got a sample worth trying," she said. "Which case?" "Willard, missing since 2005. Sealed biological evidence qualifies. How long since it was processed?" 16 years. Holloway paused, then said, "All right, send the sample. Use Parabon Nanolabs. They're our partner for genealogy tech." That afternoon, Grayson signed the order to unseal the evidence. In Cold Storage Unit 4, third shelf on the left, where faded nylon bags sat for years, technicians retrieved CSU 12 2005s, labeled spoon, silver, possible human residue. The yellowed seal bore Mark Ellison's 2005 signature, faintly visible. The sample was moved to a microbiology lab, a small portion from the spoon's tip placed in a liquid nitrogen container. Grayson drafted a transfer report, sending it to Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia, a leader in cold case DNA via forensic genetic genealogy, cross-referencing with commercial genetic databases. She attached the 2011 data, evidence photos, and original collection logs. As the steel-sealed container left Milwaukee, Grayson stood silently, watching. She didn't know if results would yield anything, but touching a case buried for nearly 2 decades weighed on her. She knew Margaret Willard's name was no longer just an old file. It was part of the city's memory. 3 weeks later, Parabon's first email arrived, titled Initial DNA Extraction Report, Case #051218. Grayson opened it instantly. The 14-page report stated, high-quality mitochondrial DNA recovered from silver spoon surface, sufficient for FGG analysis. The sample was viable, rare for 16-year-old evidence. The final line made her smile quietly. Proceeding with genealogical comparison, she printed the report, placing it on Holloway's desk. He nodded slightly. Not many cases get this lucky. Stay in touch with Parabon for the first match list. Grayson left, stepping into the gleaming, metallic-scented hallway. In her mind, the 2005 case stirred: an elderly woman shoveling snow, a glove buried in ice, a porch boot print, and a silver spoon, the only items still holding her breath. That evening, leaving the station, Lake Michigan's wind blew strong, carrying the city's damp snow scent. Grayson pulled up her collar, hurrying along the waterfront. She thought of the 2005 technicians who meticulously sealed evidence, never knowing that 16 years later, it might speak again. At the ground floor, the central server blinked green. A new system alert appeared: syncing data, case hash 051,218, status, reopened for forensic genealogy testing. No one on night shift noticed, but it marked the most significant moment since that 2005 winter, the first time in 16 years that Margaret Willard's case was officially reopened. June 2021. Milwaukee entered a wet summer. In the stark white criminal science office, Lieutenant Laura Grayson sat before her computer, awaiting Parabon Nanolab's genealogy results. The email arrived Monday morning, titled FGG Results, Case Hash 051,218. Her pulse quickened as she opened it. The report's first line read, DNA profile recovered from silver spoon surface, contains mixed trace. Primary female, consistent with victim, secondary male of unrelated lineage. Genealogical comparison suggests 98.7% probability of match to Laporte family line, Indiana. She read it 3 times to be sure. Laporte. The name stood out from the 2005 file, the plumber neighbor, last to see Margaret Willard alive. A man long dismissed due to a time-stamped invoice. Grayson opened the digitized PD database, searching Laporte Dennis. The screen showed a brief file. Interviewed December 26, 2005, cooperative, no inconsistencies, not pursued further. Attached was Donahue's handwritten report, bold strokes. Subject presented invoice proving presence at South Waterworks at 11:04 a.m. No indication of deception. She flipped to accompanying documents: the boot print photo, wavy sole pattern, 2005 evidence report. Cross-referencing, she noticed the note, shoe impression size approx. 10 matched Laporte's 2005 job application, size 10.5, Red Wing work boots. That small detail, likely overlooked for 16 years, now felt heavy as testimony. Grayson sat still. In the cold room, the hum of air conditioning filled the thick silence. She knew this wasn't a conviction, but it was the case's first major break. The DNA on the silver spoon, the only remnant of that 2005 winter night, had pulled time backward, linking directly to the man Donahue suspected but couldn't prove. She printed Parabon's 26-page report, marking key lines in red, then headed to Holloway's office. He was reviewing another case, looking up as she knocked. New lead, Laura? She set the papers down. Parabon sent results. Male DNA on the spoon matches the Laporte line in Indiana. I checked. Only one Laporte lived in Milwaukee, Dennis. Holloway frowned, scanning the first pages. You sure? 98.7% probability. And Laporte was the last neighbor to see the victim. Interviewed in 2005, he was a plumber. Wore boots matching the porch print. Holloway tapped his pen, thinking, if it's him, this isn't just a missing person case anymore. Grayson nodded. I want to request a formal reinvestigation. We have enough to re-examine evidence, trace the DNA, and verify Laporte's current location. That afternoon, Grayson submitted a reinvestigation request report to the Cold Case Division. In the concise 5-page summary, she laid out a clear logical thread. Known male DNA found on evidence is exogenous. Genetic sequence matches the Laporte lineage, Indiana. Individual Dennis Laporte had direct contact with the victim on December 17, 2005. Evidence and boot print from 2005 align with Laporte's work tools and boots. She concluded briefly, Recommendation: reopen as potential homicide investigation. Primary person of interest: Dennis Laporte. The file was submitted to the Wisconsin Forensic Committee within 48 hours. By week's end, they approved a reactivation, high-priority order. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, Margaret Willard's disappearance was upgraded to a suspected criminal investigation. Grayson tracked down former Sergeant Rick Donahue, now retired in northern Wisconsin. He lived in a small house near Oshkosh, rarely venturing out. When he heard her voice over the phone, he paused for a long moment. "I knew it. Go on." Grayson briefly outlined the new findings, the DNA sequence, and Laporte's name resurfacing after 16 years. A heavy sigh came from the other end. "I thought of him from the start," he said slowly, voice hoarse. "But back then, we had nothing to hold him. Now you do. Would you consult on this case again?" Donahue gave a small, bitter laugh. "I'm old, but if you need someone who remembers the scene, I still have the original map. Never threw it out." The following week, Grayson began preparations for the new investigation phase. She sent a formal request to the Indiana State Police to locate Laporte's current residence and asked the Civil Records Office to verify his legal status and Social Security number. The response came faster than expected. Laporte Dennis. Current residence Fort Wayne, Indiana. No active warrants. Retired contractor. A 72-year-old man, living quietly for years, unaware his name had resurfaced in a case long thought forgotten. While awaiting Parabon's detailed genealogical tree, Grayson reviewed the old crime scene photos. The yellow lamplight, teacup, silver spoon, boot print on the porch. Each detail now seemed to carry new weight. She wondered, had Laporte sat at that table, sipped that tea, held that spoon before Margaret vanished? Late that night, she drafted a memo to Holloway. Genealogical DNA results indicate a high probability of evidence linking to Dennis Laporte. Request formal reinvestigation, federal coordination with Indiana to obtain a comparison DNA sample from the potential suspect. As she hit send, the clock read 11:47 p.m. The room darkened, lit only by her screen's glow on her focused face. Grayson leaned back, exhaling. Outside, a ship's horn echoed from the port, lingering in Milwaukee's night. In the electronic archive, the case status updated automatically. Case #051218, reactivated, June 24, 2021. Lead investigator, Lieutenant Laura Grayson. Primary POI, Dennis Laporte. After 16 years of silence, that line glowed again on the system, and with it, the shadow of the 2005 winter began to stir. On the morning of June 25, 2021, after reinvestigation approval, Lieutenant Laura Grayson took the first step in field data verification. Her goal was clear: re-examine every piece of physical evidence and 2005 administrative data to determine if what was once deemed normal was truly harmless. She reopened Laporte's file, scanning his old Shore Drive address and occupation. Independent plumbing contractor, licensed under Milwaukee Water Department. From her office, Grayson sent a formal request to the city administrative office for Laporte's work schedule, contracts, and invoices from the week of the disappearance. Within 2 days, an 87-page file arrived: work logs, maintenance notes, and water meter inspection reports. Reviewing it, Grayson spotted a key detail. On December 17, 2005, Laporte Dennis appeared in 2 consecutive entries. One, under private repair job, Shore Drive. Another, under material purchase, South Waterworks. Internal timestamps logged 9:05 and 11:12 a.m. that day. The 2-hour gap between those times was when Willard was last seen. Grayson printed the data, underlining it in red. She then cross-referenced commercial records, requesting Home Depot's South Milwaukee branch to check Laporte's merchant credit card transactions from December 15, 2005. It took 3 days for Home Depot to send archived data. Late Thursday evening, opening the heavy PDF, Grayson's eyes locked on the 7th line, transaction ID 517000287, December 17, 2005, 10:42 a.m. Purchase 2 bags Quickcrete cement mix, 1 snow shovel, 1 pack rubber gloves. Payment method: merchant credit card, D. Laporte Plumbing Services. She sat still for minutes, hearing only the hum of her computer fan. Cement, shovel, rubber gloves, all purchased the morning before Margaret vanished. In investigations, no coincidence was that random. The next morning, Grayson met Holloway. He read the printout, looking up. All bought the same day she disappeared? Yes, and the timing aligns with when Laporte said he left Willard's house for the water station. Could be materials for work. Maybe, Grayson replied. But his company records show no repairs that week using cement or a shovel. No clients needed those materials. Holloway paused, then nodded. I see your point. We need to verify his location from 9 to 11 a.m. that day. The issue was that in 2005, GPS tracking wasn't widespread. Old telecom data had been erased per retention policies. Grayson had to find another way. She contacted First National Bank of Wisconsin, Laporte's card issuer, requesting the original receipt for the December 17th transaction. A week later, they sent a faded copy, still legible, showing the Home Depot branch coordinates, 4111 South 27th Street, Milwaukee. Using mapping software, she measured the distance just over 3.4 miles from Willard's house, a 10-minute drive. Laporte could have left Willard's, stopped to buy materials, and returned to the neighborhood before 11 a.m. Matching the work invoice he showed Donahue. Piecing it together, a picture emerged, 9 o'clock. Laporte at Willard's house, let in to fix plumbing. 10:30, Willard vanishes. Laporte leaves, possibly taking something in his truck. 10:42, purchase of cement, shovel, rubber gloves at Home Depot. 11:12, logged at the water station, establishing an alibi. All within less than 2 hours. Grayson pinned colored notes to a board: time, location, evidence, action. Red arrows connected them, forming a chillingly logical map. She couldn't say what happened in that house, but everything pointed one way. Laporte was the last to see the victim, with time, means, and motive to hide something. She requested expanded access to Milwaukee's 2005 demographic database, reviewing Laporte's tax records, vehicle registration, and professional licenses. Reports showed he sold his silver gray Ford E150 van in February 2006. 2 months after the disappearance, the new owner registered it in suburban Kenosha, then transferred it to Illinois. The vehicle was now untraceable. Grayson printed the report, marking vehicle transfer February 2006, untraceable. If that van still existed, it could be key evidence. But only paper records remained. Still, the December 17th data was too clear to ignore. Late that afternoon, she returned to her desk, opening the old photo of Margaret Willard from the file. A silver-haired woman, kind smile, warm eyes, now just system data. But Grayson felt she stood at the edge, where truth was rising from the ice. Milwaukee PD's forensic lab hummed with pale white light and the constant drone of dehumidifiers. Since Willard's case reopened, Lieutenant Laura Grayson spent most of her time there. On her desk was the old evidence box from cold storage. CSU 12 2005, resealed in June 2021 after DNA sampling. This time, her focus wasn't the silver spoon but the overlooked boot print and gray fiber. Forensic technician David Cho, a mechanical trace expert, opened the box. Clear plastic bags held the old silicone mold, scene photos, and a gray fiber taped to white paper. The label, in Ellison's 2005 handwriting, read footwear impression, size approx. 10. Fiber sample from kitchen threshold. Tech now can reanalyze everything, David said evenly. This mold was well done. Ellison was thorough. He placed the mold on a glass table, activating a 3D scanner. The screen revealed clear wavy ridges and grooves, a herringbone-patterned sole with a small RW mark on the edge. David rotated the digital model, zooming in. Red Wing 2406, a common industrial boot from the 2000s, used by technicians and plumbers, size around 10 to 10.5. Grayson stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the projection. She opened the personnel file from the water company, Laporte's 2004 job application copy. In the equipment and gear used section, he listed work boots, Red Wing 2406, size 10.5. She read it aloud, each word heavy in the silence. David looked up, nodding, not conclusive, but this match isn't coincidence anymore. Grayson printed a 3D comparison of the scene's boot print and the manufacturer's model. Every ridge, every groove spacing aligned, near perfect correlation. In her end-of-day memo she wrote, footwear impression consistent with Red Wing 2406. Same model and size as Laporte's declared work boots. Correlation, 95%. But she didn't stop there. The evidence bag held a gray fiber from the victim's kitchen threshold. Under 2005 optical microscopes, it was just a plain synthetic thread. With modern equipment, Grayson could identify its polymer composition. Hours later, the screen showed synthetic fiber, polyester cotton blend, type used in Carhartt Arctic work coat. She cross-checked Laporte's 2005 water company employee file. A note read, issued uniform, Carhartt Arctic coat. Gray, size L. Another piece clicked into place. The gray fiber in Willard's house matched the fabric of Laporte's issued uniform at the time of her disappearance. As she cross-referenced, Grayson felt the logic closing in. Each detail, boots, coat, evidence, timeline, like worn gears locking back into place after 16 years. She opened the investigation timeline, adding, the 17th of December, 2005, 9 o'clock. Laporte at victim's house. 10:42. Laporte buys cement, shovel, rubber gloves. Boot print Red Wing 2406, matches Laporte's model. Carhartt Arctic coat fiber, matches Laporte's uniform. Everything Donahue suspected in 2005 was now backed by scientific data. Grayson sealed the evidence bag, signing the log. Leaving the lab at 7:15 p.m., the hallway glowed golden. She brought the prints, images, and reports to Holloway's office. He skimmed them, setting them down. You know what this means? Yes. All physical evidence ties to Laporte. It's not just genealogy anymore. Holloway leaned back, exhaling. Without his direct DNA, we still need one more step, confirmation from a comparison sample. I know, but now we have enough for a surveillance warrant. Before leaving, she added, he's lived quietly for 16 years. He thinks no one remembers. Holloway replied softly. Until he knows you're here, it's too late. 3 weeks after the boot print and fiber reports were sent, Milwaukee PD officially escalated the Willard case to an active criminal investigation. On Lieutenant Laura Grayson's desk, the file was now twice as thick, pages marked with red sticky notes. All pointed to one name, Dennis Laporte. She knew the next phase would move beyond the lab, into the field, where truth had to be proven beyond data. Demographic records confirmed Laporte lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in a quiet neighborhood by the Maumee River. Retired, living alone, he did odd repair jobs for the local church. His criminal record was clean, no violations in a decade. To neighbors, Laporte was a kind old man who watered plants and helped others. Grayson knew breaking that facade required federal cooperation. In August 2021, she flew to Indiana, working directly with the FBI field office in Fort Wayne. A closed-door meeting took place in a small conference room with Special Agent Ryan Keller coordinating technical support. After hearing Grayson's evidence chain, Keller asked, "No direct DNA from Laporte?" "Not yet. Just the 2005 evidence and indirect genealogical match. Then priority one is confirming with his biological sample." "Got a plan to get it?" Grayson nodded, her gaze cold and resolute. "We'll watch, wait for him to slip." Surveillance began in early September. The FBI assigned a 2-person team, joining Grayson and Milwaukee investigator Eli Madsen. They set up an observation point 2 streets from Laporte's house in a van, disguised as a delivery vehicle. His home was a classic single-story, painted gray-blue, with a low wooden fence and a small garden of wild daisies. Each morning, He drank coffee on the porch, read the paper, occasionally walked to a nearby convenience store. A calm, routine life, like any elderly man's. The first days showed nothing notable. Grayson sat for hours in the van, watching through a zoom lens, noting habits. 6:45 a.m. The El Port opens door. 7:10, takes out trash. 7:20, makes coffee. 9 o'clock, drives old pickup to church. She told herself, he may be old, but the guilty never rest easy. One early October morning, Laporte went to Corner Brew Cafe, where he often read the paper. Grayson and Keller followed, sitting 2 rows away. They watched him drink black coffee, chat briefly with the owner, then leave, leaving his paper cup behind. Keller signaled the staff to hold the cup. When he was gone, Grayson, wearing latex gloves, collected it, sealing it in an evidence bag labeled FG091021 Laporte's cup. The sample was sent that day to Indianapolis's forensic lab with rapid DNA equipment. 3 days later, the results returned, a bolded line silencing the team. DNA profile from coffee cup matched 100% with unknown male DNA extracted from spoon. Probability of identity 1 in 2.8 quintillion. Grayson read it repeatedly, feeling relief and a chill. After 16 years, the silver spoon in that silent kitchen had finally pointed to the man there with Margaret Willard the morning she vanished. No longer genealogy or probability, this was absolute. On February 21, 2023, nearly 18 years after the snow-covered morning Margaret Willard disappeared, Milwaukee PD and FBI Fort Wayne returned to the gray house on Fernwood Drive. This was no quiet arrest. It was an official search warrant signed by an Allen County judge authorizing seizure of all evidence related to the disappearance and presumed death of Margaret Willard. At 5:28 a.m., red and blue task force lights flashed on bare trees, illuminating the small house where Dennis Laporte had lived calmly for over a decade. The front door was opened with a spare key held by the FBI from his 2021 arrest. Inside, the air was stale, smelling of old wood and machine oil. Everything remained as it was when he was handcuffed. A coffee cup with dried residue, a calendar stuck on October 2021, dust coating everything. Lieutenant Laura Grayson crossed the threshold, now leading the scene. Record the entire process. Every drawer, every box, check every floor, she instructed. 2 forensic technicians spread through the house. Another team entered the garage. The house, under 800 square feet, was cluttered. Pipes, toolboxes, tax papers, old, taped-up cardboard boxes. At 7:42, a call came from the basement. "Lieutenant, you need to see this." Grayson descended the creaky wooden stairs, her flashlight sweeping the cold cement walls. In the far corner, among rusty toolboxes, sat a brown leather suitcase, its lock rusted, edges peeling. A faded paper label on the side, in smudged blue ink, read "Private Tools, 2006. A technician in latex gloves unlocked the suitcase. As the lid opened, a musty smell of old metal wafted out. Inside were not tools but neatly folded clothes. A burgundy sweater, a beige wool scarf, and a silver necklace with a broken clasp. All were wrapped in thin, brittle plastic bags, their edges crumbling with age. Grayson leaned down, her flashlight illuminating the necklace, a small crescent moon engraved with MW, the letters faint but legible. She knew the mark, Margaret Willard, custom engraved for her late husband, noted in the 2005 report. She stood frozen for a moment, a chill running down her spine. 18 years, and the lost item lay here, in the home of the man who insisted he only came to fix the plumbing. "Seal it, photograph in place, sign for confirmation," Grayson said softly. The technicians worked quickly, placing each item on white nylon, labeling them item #23B. Evidence recovered at Fort Wayne residence, uncovering the suitcase's lining, revealed a layer of fine gray soil clinging to the leather seams and hinges. The soil was carefully collected into a vial. Before sealing it, Grayson leaned closer, recognizing a familiar earthy scent, wet clay mixed with sand, characteristic of the area around Humboldt Park, Milwaukee, where the 2005 search teams had scoured. A week later, the geology lab in Madison sent results. Soil sample collected from LaPorte residents matches 98.7% mineral composition, with samples taken near Humboldt Park. Trace of de-icing salt, consistent with soil composition of Lake Michigan shore area, winter 2005. No doubt remained, the suitcase had been in contact with soil from the area where Margaret was presumed to have disappeared. Grayson placed the results on the interrogation table, staring directly at LaPorte, now brought from holding to review the evidence. The 73-year-old man, white-haired, face gaunt, but eyes defiant, silently studied the photo of the suitcase. She didn't ask immediately, instead opening the evidence bag, placing the necklace on the table. "Recognize this?" LaPorte looked down, his fingers twitching slightly. "I don't know," he said softly, voice trembling. "You said you never returned to Milwaukee after 2006. The soil in your suitcase matches Humboldt Park perfectly. Care to explain?" LaPorte swallowed hard. "She slipped," he blurted after a long silence. "I panicked. I didn't mean to." Grayson narrowed her eyes, keeping her voice steady. "Where did she slip?" "Outside the porch," he said, head bowed. "I tried to help her, but she didn't wake up. I was scared. I'd lost my job. I didn't want to be blamed. I took her away from the house." In the room, the recorder clicked, then fell silent. No one spoke. Grayson stared at him. The man who hid a secret for nearly 2 decades with such simple lies. She wrote in the report, "Suspect confesses partial involvement, claiming accidental death and unauthorized disposal of body. Statement requires corroboration." That same day, the Milwaukee County Prosecutor's Office issued a decision to detain Dennis LaPorte for obstruction of justice, with potential escalation to homicide charges if further evidence emerged. 3 weeks after the search of LaPorte's home, with late-season snow still dusting the ground, Milwaukee PD launched a final search operation. Humboldt Park excavation. The suitcase's soil report confirmed LaPorte's presence in the area during the 2005 winter. Now, with his vague confession, "She slipped. I panicked." The team knew the site might hold the final answer to nearly 2 decades of silence. On March 14, 2023, at 6 a.m., thick fog blanketed the small lake in Humboldt Park. Police set up barriers, sealing off the southern area, a site with an abandoned house foundation from 2004, now just cracked concrete and overgrown weeds. Lieutenant Laura Grayson, with forensic and engineering teams from the Wisconsin Geological Survey, brought ground-penetrating radar (GPR) to detect subsurface anomalies. "Start scanning from the southeast corner," Grayson ordered. The machine's screen displayed curving waves, black and white intermingling. Each faint beep signaled a radar echo from below. For the first 30 minutes, only scattered signals from rocks and metal. But at the foundation's center, the graph showed an anomalous curve at 70 centimeters deep, an oval 1.5 meters long, with weak reflection, typical of disturbed soil. Grayson leaned over the screen, her pulse slowing. "Mark area A3, she said softly. The forensic team staked the spot, setting up rain tarps. Excavation tools were brought out, small shovels, brushes, plastic bins, evidence bags. No one spoke loudly. The sound of metal on soil echoed in the wind. The damp, earthy smell of old soil rose, thick with Lake Michigan's chill. After nearly 2 hours of hand digging, a technician's shovel hit something hard. He paused, switching to a brush, clearing fine soil. Under portable lights, an ivory bone fragment emerged, broken at the wrist. No doubt, it was human. The team paused, silent for seconds in an unspoken ritual. Grayson took a deep breath, voice low. "Keep going. Follow protocol." As more soil was removed, additional bones appeared, ribs, femur, a skull tilted right. Nearby were small items mixed in the dirt, a broken scented candle, a silver metal casing, and a severed silver chain, matching the necklace from Laporte's home. Everything was sealed, coded by location, and placed in cold storage containers. When the skull was lifted, Grayson noted a narrow, uneven crack on the left temple, possibly from a heavy impact. She said nothing, staring intently. Laporte's words echoing. She slipped. A fall, or a strike? The question hung in the cold, damp air, unanswered. The bone samples were sent to the Wisconsin State Forensic Lab. 10 days later, on March 24th, results reached Grayson's desk. The first line made her pause before exhaling. DNA extracted from femur bone matches 100% with reference profile of Margaret Willard. Below was the conclusion, identity confirmed. Cause of death undetermined, due to advanced decomposition, but evidence consistent with blunt force trauma and environmental exposure. Grayson folded the printout, leaning back. Nearly 20 years later, Margaret Willard's name left the missing person list for a victim file. She was no longer a shadow in memory, but a person with a resting place found. That afternoon, the Milwaukee prosecutor's office held an urgent meeting. Forensic experts, police, and FBI representatives attended. Grayson presented the findings, linking Laporte's confession and matching evidence. Prosecutor Andrea Holt opened the file, concluding, based on current data, the victim died from accident or negligence, abandoned, leading to death. Actions of concealment and failure to report constitute homicide by neglect with intent to obstruct justice. Under Wisconsin Code 940.10, the room felt heavy as lead. Everyone knew what it meant. The cold 2005 disappearance was now a homicide by neglect and concealment case. Grayson listened silently as the prosecutor read the decision. In her mind, the abandoned foundation reappeared, gray soil, a glinting necklace, fragile bones tilted in silence. Homicide by neglect. 2 cold words. Yet the only way to restore a forgotten person's identity. That evening, she drove to Lake Michigan. Late winter, strong winds, the dark water reflecting distant yellow city lights. Grayson stood by the shore, hearing steady waves, feeling something close. Not victory, not satisfaction, just the quiet of delayed justice. In her report to headquarters, she wrote, "Excavation at Humboldt Park confirms recovery of Margaret Willard's remains. Evidence aligns with suspect's statement, though inconsistencies remain regarding cause of trauma. Case reclassified. Homicide by neglect and concealment." She typed a final line, pausing before saving. The snow has finally melted. In that cold Milwaukee night, for the first time in 18 years, Margaret Willard's story was no longer a question mark over Lake Michigan. It became a truth writable in a file, readable in court, silencing the city when heard. On the morning of March 27, 2023, the third-floor meeting room at Milwaukee PD was silent, save for steady keyboard clicks. On a large screen, crime scene photos, movement diagrams, and evidence data pieced together an 18-year puzzle. Lieutenant Laura Grayson stood before a whiteboard, red laser pointer in hand, voice calm but heavy. Now we reconstruct the timeline, not by his words, but by the data. She pointed to the first line. The 17th of December, 2005, 8:45 a.m. Dennis Laporte was confirmed at Margaret Willard's house per Milwaukee Water Department records. He came to fix a leaking pipe under the kitchen sink. Willard, 68, lived alone, having reported the issue 3 days earlier. Grayson clicked, showing a 3D model of the victim's kitchen sink, back door, wooden floor. She continued. Per Laporte's statement, she slipped. I panicked. But forensic analysis of the Red Wing 2406 boot print and skid marks on the tile indicates a collision. The skid starts near the sink, toward the dining table, not parallel, as in a typical fall. She was pushed or pulled forcefully. An officer spoke, motive for an argument. Grayson nodded. Financial records show Laporte withdrew $200 from his company account on December 16, unlisted. A blank check in the victim's coat pocket had Dennis Leld partially written. She likely refused extra payment when he tried doubling the fee. The screen showed the silver spoon with the DNA smudge. During the argument, she was making tea. Laporte's DNA on the spoon proves he handled table items, likely while trying to grab or push her. She fell, hitting her head on the kitchen table edge. The left temple fracture matches the table's height and position. Grayson paused, the screen's light reflecting on her face. No evidence suggests intent to kill, but his actions afterward were the crime. She switched to the Home Depot image, 10:42 a.m. Laporte bought 2 bags of cement, rubber gloves, a shovel. The merchant card receipt matches bank data. He left the store at 10:53, returning to Shore Drive before 11:10. Neighbors saw no truck, but traffic radar logged a silver-gray Ford E150 on the Lakeside Road during this window. The second screen showed the Fort Wayne suitcase, soil on its hinges matching Humboldt Park. We believe between 11 a.m. and noon, Laporte placed the body in his tool suitcase, coated it with thin cement to mask odor, and drove to an abandoned Humboldt Park site where he'd worked on pipes the prior year. He buried the body under a cracked concrete foundation. The suitcase and site soil matched perfectly. She stepped to the table, placing 3 photos: the beige scarf, burgundy sweater, crescent moon necklace. These were found in his suitcase, not tools, but memories. Perhaps after burial, he kept them as a reminder, or to control his fear of discovery. A veteran investigator asked softly, "Why didn't he leave Milwaukee right after?" Grayson looked at him. He thought no one suspected. Willard lived quietly, no close family, vanished in a snowstorm, no struggle, no blood, no witnesses. He believed the snow erased everything, and he was right, for 16 years. On the screen, Grayson displayed the 2005 snow boot print next to a 3D Red Wing model. Perfect alignment. She said, "When snow fell that night, the lone print was buried." But 2021 tech did what 2005 couldn't. Same with the Carhartt fiber, matching Laporte's issued uniform. Each small detail forms a cohesive story. She wrote on the board, "Timeline reconstructed, mine reconstructed, mine reconstructed, mine reconstructed, mine reconstruct." Line 30. Argument over service fees. Line 40. She falls, left temple injury. Mine reconceals, the body. Cleans traces, leaves. Mine reconceal. Buys cement, shovel, gloves. Mine reconceal. Returns to Humboldt Park, buries body under abandoned foundation. Mine reconceal. Lugs work at water station, creating alibi. The room was silent. No one needed to add more. All knew this timeline, though built on science, was a summary of a tragic morning where an elderly woman just wanted her kitchen pipe fixed. Grayson turned off the projector, closing the file. "No clear murder motive," she said slowly. But there was a choice. When she fell, he could have called 911. Instead, he chose cement, a shovel, and silence. That choice turned an accident into a crime. "Prosecutor," Holt nodded, voice hoarse. "We have enough for court." Grayson looked out the window. Outside, Milwaukee was in spring, the last snow melting, revealing dark, wet soil, the same soil they'd just excavated. In that moment, she realized time's cycle was complete. Snow fell, snow melted, truth emerged. Milwaukee PD's Interrogation Room 3 was bathed in cold white light. Gray-painted concrete walls, a metal table, the recorder clicking softly as the tape rolled. Dennis Laporte sat, head bowed, hands clasped, nails digging into his skin. Across from him were Lieutenant Laura Grayson and Prosecutor Andrea Holt. 18 years of waiting ended here, in a windowless room, with only breathing and the truth rising slowly, like melting spring ice. Grayson opened the file, voice steady and low. "You said." She slipped. I panicked. "We believe that's only part of the story. Now's your chance to tell it all." Laporte didn't look up. His lips moved, then rasped. "I didn't mean it, I swear to God. She fell, and I panicked." "Panicked so you took her away?" Holt asked, voice firm. He took a deep breath, gathering what courage remained. "I came to fix the pipe, like the records say." She said, "The price was too high. I said materials were costly, hard to get in winter. She argued, said she'd report me to the company. I was under the sink. She was behind me, her voice getting louder. I turned, bumped into her. She lost balance, fell. I heard her head hit, then silence. No one interrupted. Only Grayson's pen scratched slowly. I called her name a few times. No response. I checked her pulse, weak. I was scared. I'd been sued in 2002 for a work accident. I thought they'd say I meant it. I didn't know what to do. He looked up, eyes wet, voice trembling. I pulled her out, put her on a chair, but blood started seeping from her hair. I lost control. Then I put her in the truck. The gray Ford? Grayson asked. Yeah. I put her in the back, covered her with a tarp. I drove around, then stopped at the old Humboldt Park site. I'd worked pipes there the year before, knew the cracked foundation. I brought cement bags and a shovel, meant to cover it clean. I wasn't thinking, I just wanted it gone. Grayson opened photos of the suitcase, necklace, sweater, placing them before him. Why keep these? Laporte looked, hands shaking. She was wearing them when she fell. I don't know why I kept them, maybe to remind myself. She stared at him for a long moment, then asked softly, "Did you ever go back there?" "Once, the next summer. I drove by, saw the site was fenced off, and I knew no one would find it. I thought I was free." He gave a small, twisted smile, as if just realizing his own folly. Holt leaned back in her chair, glanced at Grayson, then spoke slowly. "Your statement matches the scene perfectly. The candle fragment, the necklace, the soil composition, all align. There's no evidence you actively caused injury, but your actions, hiding the body, not reporting, obstructing the investigation, are serious crimes." Laporte's head dropped. "I know, I've lived with it every day. Every time I heard snow falling, I saw her face." Grayson turned off the recorder, closed the file, her voice hoarse. "We found her exactly where you said. There's nothing left to deny." He didn't respond, only nodded slightly, tears falling onto his wrinkled hands. The room sank into silence, broken only by the soft patter of rain on the tin roof. That afternoon, the official report was sent to the Milwaukee County Prosecutor's Office. The first line stated clearly, "Subject Dennis Laporte admits to concealing the body of Margaret Willard following accidental death on December 17, 2005. Description of location and sequence of events fully consistent with recovered evidence. No proof of intent to kill. Recommendation, charge of manslaughter by neglect and obstruction of justice." In a closed press briefing, Prosecutor Holt addressed city officials. "Based on the confession and forensic results, we determine the actions do not constitute murder in the first degree, but meet the elements of manslaughter by neglect. The suspect left the victim in a dangerous state, failed to call for help, and actively concealed the death." The press was barred, but news spread quickly. Some local papers ran headlines, "Man carried secret in Milwaukee's snow." Meanwhile, Grayson stayed in her office, staring at the computer screen displaying case reclassified, manslaughter by neglect. Open for trial. As night fell, she sat alone, replaying the interrogation audio. Laporte's hoarse voice echoed through the speaker. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted it to go away." Each word cut like a blade. Grayson knew he spoke the truth, not out of conscience, but exhaustion. 18 years of fear and guilt had finally drained him. She looked out the window, the city glittering under night rain. Somewhere, under the damp soil around Humboldt Lake, ice melted, water seeping through old cement, erasing traces of a human crime. But the file endured. The file would always remain. The Milwaukee County Prosecutor's Office stayed lit through many April 2023 nights. Stacks of thick files and hard drives of investigation data moved from the police department to Janet Rios's desk. The prosecutor assigned to State of Wisconsin vs. Dennis Laporte, known for her meticulousness and ability to reconstruct scenes through logic alone, she needed few words, only evidence. Before her, the desk was covered with colored labels: DNA, evidence, timeline, statement, receipt. Each was a piece of the case, a fragment of an 18-year story. Janet began with the most critical chain: DNA. In the first file, reports from Parabon Nanolabs and the Wisconsin Forensic Lab confirmed a 100% match between the male DNA on the silver spoon and the sample from Laporte's 2021 coffee cup. At the bottom, in bold, probability of random match, less than 1 in 2.8 quintillion. Janet marked it in red, noting, primary link, unbroken chain of custody confirmed. The second file held evidence from both searches: the brown suitcase, sweater, scarf, moon-shaped necklace engraved with MW, and soil-matching Humboldt Park's mineral composition. She arranged each item by discovery order, with scene photos, sealing logs, and preservation confirmations. Under physical evidence, she typed all items authenticated, cross-referenced with forensic database. Next was the confession. She reviewed the final interrogation transcript, hearing Laporte's hoarse voice. "I didn't mean to hurt her, I just didn't know what to do." The words not only admitted guilt, but described the foundation's location, door orientation, and concrete structure, perfectly matching the excavation site. Janet excerpted the statement, marking in green, corroborates physical findings. Then the receipts and invoices. The Home Depot file showed the December 17, 2005, 10:42 a.m. purchase: cement, rubber gloves, shovel. Bank data confirmed Laporte's company card transaction. Janet pinned the receipt to motive and cover-up, purchase of tools directly preceding concealment. Finally, the boot print. She opened forensic expert David Cho's 3D scan report. Red Wing 2406 sole, size 10.5, identical to Laporte's job application declaration. The screen showed every ridge matching. Janet pursed her lips. This will open the presentation. The boots that stepped out of the snow to point to their wearer, she thought. The evidence chain was seamless, no gaps. But Janet wanted certainty. She called in the Wisconsin Forensic Engineering Institute's 3D reconstruction team. In the lab, they built a virtual model of Willard's kitchen, sink, wooden floor, dining table, point of impact. Using the boot print, skid direction, and object trajectory, the software recreated the final moments. On the large screen, the 3D model showed Laporte crouching under the sink, Willard behind him, holding a teacup, facing the door. He stood abruptly, colliding with her, causing her to fall backward, head striking the table edge. The simulation recreated the impact angle, skull fracture, and landing position, matching forensic data precisely. When the model was complete, Janet stood silently, heart heavy. It all happened in under 5 seconds, yet it altered 2 lives, one ended, one buried in guilt for nearly 2 decades. She requested the 3D presentation be exported as Evidence Exhibit A, noting in the record, digital reconstruction, consistent with suspect's statement and forensic trajectory analysis, supports classification, manslaughter by neglect. That evening, the office was quiet. Janet sat at her computer, reviewing the final court submission list, DNA report and chain of custody confirmation, sealed evidence inventory, Laporte's interrogation transcript, receipts, bank data, employment records, boot print report, and 3D simulation results. Forensic team's cause of death conclusion. She signed each page, affixing seals. When complete, Janet carefully placed the files in a hard case, labeled State of Wisconsin vs. Dennis Laporte. Submission to Milwaukee County Circuit Court at 9 a.m. The next day, she personally delivered the files to the Milwaukee County Courthouse. The clerk received them, signed confirmation, and placed them in the pending trials tray. A small sign bore the case number #2023 MCR 218, marking a case that had slept too long. In October 2023, Milwaukee wore the faded gold of autumn. Lake Michigan's cold breeze swept through the streets, brushing the courthouse steps where reporters, law enforcement, and curious citizens gathered early. The electronic board at the entrance displayed, State of Wisconsin vs. Dennis Laporte, case number 2023 MCR 218. 18 years after that snow-covered 2005 morning, Margaret Willard's name was finally spoken publicly in court. Inside, the air was heavy, the rustle of papers audible on the prosecution's table. Prosecutor Janet Rios sat in the front row, beside Lieutenant Laura Grayson, who had followed the case from start to finish. Across the room, Dennis Laporte, 73, wore an oversized gray suit, hands clasped on the table. His wrinkled face and tired eyes held a calm resignation, as if he'd gone too far to fight back. At 9 a.m., Judge Eleanor Marks opened the trial. Today we hear State v. Laporte, with 2 charges, negligent homicide and improper disposal of a body. The jury of 12 has been sworn to impartiality. Janet stood, opening with a steady, deep voice. Ladies and gentlemen of the court and jury, this is not just a closed missing person case. This is a story of silence. A woman who fell, was left, and was buried under snow for 18 years. We will prove that, though Dennis Laporte did not intend murder, his actions stole Margaret Willard's chance to survive. And then, he deliberately concealed, buried the truth, with cement, fear, and lies. She paused, scanning the courtroom, then pointed to the evidence table. Everything you're about to see isn't theory, it's data, science, the traces of an 18-year crime. The prosecution's presentation spanned 2 days. The large screen displayed each piece, a 3D kitchen scan. The Red Wing 2406 boot print matching Laporte's. The December 17, 2005, Home Depot receipt for cement and shovel, photos of the suitcase with the MW, engraved necklace and clothes, and the DNA report confirming a perfect match between the spoon and Laporte's 2021 coffee cup. Forensic experts testified. David Cho, the trace technician, explained the boot print, the herringbone sole pattern, unique to Red Wing 2406, matches 98%. It's near impossible to be random. Then forensic specialist Dr. Elaine Park presented the 3D collision simulation. Based on the skid angle and left temple fracture, the victim fell from an abrupt impact, not a slip. The injury caused immediate unconsciousness. Had emergency services been called within 15 minutes, survival odds exceeded 70%. Grayson took the stand, recounting the 18-year pursuit of truth. When she spoke of the Humboldt Park excavation, the courtroom held its breath. When the final soil layer was lifted, we found the silver necklace Margaret Willard always wore. I thought, finally, she's come home. Laporte sat motionless, eyes sunken, unresponsive. On day 3, defense attorney Robert Hanley rose, voice soft but firm. Your Honor, my client admits his mistake. He doesn't deny he panicked and acted foolishly, but this was an accident, not a planned murder. He had no motive, no weapon, no evidence of intentional violence. He was an aging worker, terrified an accident would ruin his life. For 18 years, his conscience punished him more than any sentence could. Hanley showed photos of Laporte during surveillance, an old man quietly living in a small house, no violations, no other violent acts. We cannot punish a man for fear, but we can for failing to help. My client accepts that. During cross-examination, Janet countered gently but sharply. Fear doesn't erase responsibility. Margaret Willard was alive for at least 10 minutes after the fall. Instead of calling 911, he bought cement. Instead of reporting, he buried her. That's no longer fear. It's a choice. And every choice carries legal consequences. On day 4, the trial reached closing arguments. Janet stood before the jury, displaying the victim's final photo, a silver-haired woman smiling on her porch. No one knows what happened behind that door on the morning of December 17, 2005, except 2 people. One is gone, and one stayed silent for nearly 2 decades. But traces don't lie. They tell it all, through fibers, soil, DNA, a simple receipt. You don't need to trust emotions. Trust science. Judge Eleanor Marks entered, her gavel striking with a resonant thud in the hushed room. The People's Court of Wisconsin, in Stateville Laporte, verdict. Her voice was low, emotionless, as if justice were an inevitable formality. Beside her, Prosecutor Janet Rios stood tall, while Lieutenant Laura Grayson sat behind, eyes fixed on the file before her. Marks read the verdict summary. The jury finds the defendant, Dennis Laporte, guilty of negligent homicide and improper disposal of a body, under Wisconsin Code 940.10 and 940.11. The defendant's actions caused grave consequences, prolonging the victim's family's pain and eroding public trust in justice. She paused, looking directly at Laporte. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Laporte looked up. He was silent for a few seconds, as if searching a decayed memory. "No," he said softly, voice hoarse. "I've said it all, I'm sorry." The apology fell into the void, unanswered. Marks read slowly. The Milwaukee County People's Court sentences the defendant, Dennis Laporte, to 25 years in prison, 20 years for negligent homicide, and 5 years for improper disposal of a body. No parole for the first 10 years. The defendant has 30 days to appeal. As she finished, no one breathed heavily. Laporte sat still, eyes on the table. His face showed no change, no tears, no anger, as if he'd stepped out of his own life. Two judicial officers approached, hands on his shoulders. He nodded slightly, stood, and walked between men nearly 40 years his junior. The steel door closed behind him, its soft clang heavy as a final punctuation. In the back row, Grayson sat silently, gripping her pen. She felt no relief, only a heavy void. Justice had arrived, but too late for both. The elderly woman buried in winter, and the man whose fear led to a lifetime in prison. Janet Rios gathered her files, exiting with Grayson. On the courthouse steps, reporters swarmed, microphones raised. Janet said only, "The Margaret Willard case is officially closed. We know justice came late, but it came. No one, no matter how long they hide in darkness, can escape the truth." She said no more. They left quietly amid camera clicks and biting early winter wind. 3 days later, Milwaukee PD held an internal press briefing at its State Street headquarters. The director read a statement. Based on the pronounced verdict, the 2005 Willard disappearance case is officially reclassified as closed. Resolved homicide. All evidence will be archived long-term in the state forensic vault. The final report will be sent to the FBI and the Wisconsin prosecutor's office. Grayson sat in the front row, hearing the cold words as someone who'd lived with the case for nearly 3 years. When the briefing ended, she returned alone to the archive room, where the metal cabinet labeled Case #05-1218, Willard, Margaret E., stood in the corner. She opened it, placing the red-stamped court decision inside. Under the dim fluorescent light, Grayson looked at the old files, photos of the silver spoon, the snowy boot print, the moon necklace, the gray fiber, and the map Donahue used to mark the 2005 search area. She spoke softly, almost to herself. "It's done, Mrs. Willard." Outside the window, Milwaukee was in late autumn. Golden leaves drifting slowly on Lake Michigan's surface. She thought of that snowy night, the yellow kitchen light, the radio playing Silent Night. A scene she never saw but lived through every report line. Now, everything was strangely quiet. That evening, local news aired briefly. After 18 years, Margaret Willard's disappearance case closed with a 25-year sentence for Dennis Laporte. Milwaukee police say the case will be used in cold case investigation training as a model for re-examination through DNA technology. No music, no sentimental narration, just images of snow-covered shore drive and a final line, "Justice, though late, arrived." In Fort Wayne, the gray house where Laporte lived was foreclosed by the bank. The wooden fence rotted, windows broke, dry leaves scattered on the porch. A neighbor whispered to a reporter, "I never thought he was hiding anything." But maybe silence speaks the loudest. And in the cold archives of the Milwaukee Police Department, case file #05-1218 was stamped "closed" in bold black ink. Beneath the final note, Grayson added a small handwritten line, not standard protocol, but the only fitting conclusion. 18 winters later, the snow finally melted. The Margaret Willard case is not just a criminal story, but a mirror reflecting how America confronts time, justice, and human responsibility. In this story, the truth wasn't revealed by luck or confession, but through preserved evidence, advancing science, and above all, the persistence of those who refuse to forget an unknown victim. From 2005 to 2023, nearly 2 decades passed. Yet the silver spoon, a small, overlooked piece of evidence, became the key to unlocking an entire mystery. This teaches us a profound lesson about the value of details and integrity in our work. In modern American life, where people live fast and forget easily, this case reminds us that what seems trivial today may be the foundation of tomorrow's justice. Moreover, Dennis Laporte's actions show how fear and silence can kill more than a single mistake. He wasn't evil, just a man driven by fear. In a country that values individual responsibility like the United States, this is a warning: when faced with a mistake, seek the truth, not an escape. A single 911 call in 2005 could have saved Margaret Willard's life, and Laporte from 18 years of hiding and guilt. Ultimately, this story celebrates faith in science and humanity, that justice is never outdated, as long as someone like Lieutenant Laura Grayson persists in seeking answers, even when snow buries all traces. In America today, this is not just a lesson for investigators, but a reminder for us all: don't let the truth be buried just because we stop caring. If you believe justice never sleeps, subscribe to our channel to join us in uncovering truths from cases long thought forgotten. Thank you for watching to the end. See you in the next video, where another American mystery will be unveiled.